Well, apparently, I'm known for being thirsty. Always carrying around a glass of water. I just need to wet the whistle. But, for example, in my last assignment, I'd be carrying my water glass through a St. Peter's school, and the students would, make fun of me, if you can believe it. Or one kid was like, "Is that your favorite glass?" I'm like, "I have more than one." Like, "Don't you have more than one at your house?" There'd be times when if I sacrificed or didn't want to hear about it, so I'd walk into their classroom without my water glass and "Where's your water glass?" I don't think they were really concerned about my hydration. Once for Christmas, family got me this nice little plastic, insulated cup with a little faith message on the outside, and the little slip of paper inside said, "For your water." I guess there's worse things to be known for, I guess. One year during the Christmas program, there was a guy that played me in the Christmas play, and of course they had him walk up on stage with, it's ridiculous. He didn't even get my tagline, "God bless you," right. He just didn't practice hard enough. In the sacristy over here, there's a list of duties that the sacristans, the people who set up for Mass, have to do. And someone wrote in, "Father Jeff McBeth, glass of water." I appreciate that they're trying to help me out, but it's also slightly embarrassingly high maintenance, which I try not to be. I guess I'm thinking too, way back when I was in the seminary, I spent 2 months in Guatemala studying Spanish, and the one day I just had a big thirst for pop, big hankering, and I think even by then I had stopped drinking it because it's really bad for you. But I think for me it was like a taste of home, so I had this big thirst, this big craving for a pop. So that was my mission in life that afternoon. So I found this little beverage stand, and they had all these options. Of course, they don't want to give you the bottle of Pepsi because they want to keep it to, get the money back for recycling it. And so I was trying to do all this on the cheap, I didn't have a lot of money. And so the cheapest option, as he was explaining it, involved the word bolsa, which I knew meant bag, but I didn't know how that fit in with a Pepsi, So I said, "Yeah, the bolsa one, that's fine, that's the cheapest, let's do that." So we took the bottle of Pepsi, took this plastic bag, not a grocery bag, but it was clear, poured it into the bag, put a straw into the bag, twisted it up, and handed it to me. It's absurd. So I took my little bolsa of Pepsi, and sort of walking along, sipping. Probably looked like even dumber of a gringo than I did before. But there you go. I don't know, maybe you've been thirsty before, I don't know. Of course, we use the word thirst in other ways too. Like in sports, for example, maybe we hear about, the team came out thirsty. They came out with a hunger, and they had this thirst for a win, and that really inspired how they played that day. And we use the word thirst for deeper realities too in our life. Like our thirst for meaning, our thirst for purpose, for wholeness in our life, our thirst for those transcendentals, goodness, truth, and beauty, and ultimately our thirst for love. Of course, it makes sense that we have these deep down thirsts, these desires, I guess. It says, one of the Vatican II documents says that as created beings, people are subject to many limitations, but they feel unlimited in their desires and in their sense that they're called for a higher life. Deep down, our deepest thirst is to have a relationship with the God who made us. And that's what we're made for. God has written on every human heart this desire for him. Bishop Barron talks about how we're hardwired for God. This is everybody, whether they really know it or not. And this relationship that we're meant to have with God is so complete and intimate, it's really like a marriage. As I talked about before, God's great design for us is that he brings us into a mystical marriage, that his desires out of his love for us to wed us to himself. We actually see that in our gospel passage today with Jesus at a well. Throughout the Old Testament, the well was the place where people found a spouse. So we have Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Rachel and Moses and Zipporah. So even to have this set up at a well, people at the time would have been thinking like, maybe someone's going to find a spouse. And of course, that's what Jesus desired for that woman in a sense. He came and led with being thirsty for physical water, but he wanted to lead her to that place for her to recognize that he himself was going to be what quenched her deepest thirst. That thirst for goodness and beauty and meaning and love and life. Throughout the Old Testament, especially, God has covenants with his people. He wants to bring them into this close relationship. Of course, that bond that God has with humanity can be either not known about or even forgotten, overlooked, even rejected. So in our first reading from Exodus 17, we have the people of Israel. Of course, God had just done all these amazing, miraculous things for them. He brought them out of Egypt, that place of slavery, through these plagues, and of course then through the 10th plague, the Passover. He parted the Red Sea for them and then closed it in on those who were pursuing them. He led them with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, all these amazing things that the Lord had continued to do for them. And the minute they find themselves physically thirsty, they forget all about it. They're like single-minded in their desire for this need for water that we all have, that they're even like, why did you bring us out here? We want to go back to Egypt, the place of slavery. It's been said that it was a lot easier to get the Israelites out of Egypt than Egypt out of Israel. We're hung on to those things that distract us from who God is and what he's doing for us. Even those people in our reading, the Israelites, they lack trust in God, even though he was in their midst doing all these great things. But despite all their testing and their dissatisfaction and their rebellion, I guess, so to speak, what does the Lord do? He provides. He still provides for them, bringing water out of a rock for them. I was thinking of other kind of rebellions, maybe like political or military rebellions, and sometimes we know those are necessary to overcome, an unjust, ruler or whatever. But I was thinking more of how do the powers that be, I guess, put down a rebellion? They shut it down, and even maybe especially if it leads to the death of all the rebels. How does God deal with our wayward, rebellious heart? He doesn't look to put us down, he comes down to save us. How does God deal with our rebellious hearts and our misdirected thirsts? He doesn't take away our life, he offers his own. We see all this too with our gospel passage today. So we see Jesus, he's coming from a long journey into Samaria, and he's there at the well, tired and thirsty. He's in need. Just like when the Lord, in a sense, had that long journey from heaven down to earth to come to us in the form of a needy baby, coming in a disarming way so that we can receive him more easily. And also Jesus is there at this well. We hear it's about noon. His disciples had gone away, and he's there alone with this woman, and presumably John, the beloved disciple, who's taking this whole conversation in. And what do we see at the end, towards the end of John's gospel that we'll hear in a few weeks on Good Friday? That Jesus is on the cross. It's about noon. His disciples had gone away, and he's there with his mother Mary and the beloved disciple. So we see in our passage today even this whole setup of who Jesus is and what he has come to do for us. St. Paul says that while we were still sinners, God proves his love for us in that Christ died while we were still helpless, so that we can have access to this grace through which we're put back into a right relationship with God, which especially through our baptism, the Holy Spirit is poured into our hearts so that we can know the peace and the hope that the Lord brings, even despite our circumstances. And the Mass, the Lord continues to come down from heaven, in a sense, to save us and to bring us life. Coming in the disarming way of being hidden under the forms of bread and wine so that it could be our spiritual food and drink to sustain us with his very self, to bring us then into a communion with him. As we encounter Christ in the Mass today, let's ask the Lord in a new way to pour his life into us, to satisfy our deepest thirsts. Because indeed, he has been waiting at the well of our hearts, thirsting to do just that.